Welcome to the Conscious Investor. Let's get started. Well, it has been over a year, I believe, since maybe a little less than that. I might be exaggerating, but it feels like over a year since I've had someone come on to the podcast to speak with us in a very specific financial sense. And I know that a lot of you are wondering, how do people afford to invest in apartment syndications, or how are people, hedging against inflation? Like, how are they able to take action to the things that they see they want to do, but they're not really sure how to do it? And I am joined by one of the coolest people that I know. I believe that we met off of LinkedIn, but today I am joined with Adam Doran, and he's a rock star, and he's going to just open the floodgates. So before we go in, I just want to say, hey, Adam, it has been long overdue for you to be on the show. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thanks, Julie. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today. This is fun stuff to talk about.
It really is fun. Why do you think it's so much fun?
Well, I think anytime you're talking about building wealth, creating impact, that stuff gets me excited. And this is a journey, my personal journey on building wealth and learning about these things starts 11 years ago in 2011. And for that entire time, I've enjoyed, through networking, meeting awesome people like you and the others in the real estate world that I've come to meet and the financial world. And I just get excited when we're talking about building impact.
It's absolutely amazing. I have so many questions, but my questions actually might be maybe more high level than we should begin. And so why don't you go ahead and just give us a snapshot as to what is it that you actually do? Who is it that you serve? Who's your general person?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I do, or at least by title, I'm an investment advisor representative, but that's kind of boring. And there's a lot of people that do that. So what do I specifically do? My focus is really on serving real estate investors, and three things primarily: taking back control financially, having clarity or organization, and then having confidence in your plan. Those three things: control, clarity, and confidence. And those are accomplished by, having a focus on building tax-free wealth, having a focus on having liquidity and the ability to access cash when you have opportunities. And then, having a smart approach towards building wealth that's not just the traditional mainstream stuff like being invested in the market, right? Which is kind of the default that most employers have us on, but also doing smart things like real estate, since that's a time-tested and proven way that many, many, many folks in America have built wealth. So that's really my focus.
That is amazing. Control, clarity, and
confidence.
Those are things that I speak about regularly on the podcast, because without clarity, I feel like that's the linchpin for so many things. If we don't understand where we want to go, it's very difficult to take any action at all, or to feel confident about taking action. So how do you bring that to your clients?
So we go through a process, an educational process. And I think that's a big part of what makes my practice different from maybe a traditional financial practice. I can tell you about this because I myself, before getting into this industry, was looking for help, was looking for an advisor, somebody to kind of guide me. And I continuously was frustrated with the coffee meetings because there was this really predictable 3-meeting sequence where we'd get together, we'd have coffee, decided that we liked each other, and then they'd send me this form to fill out, and they'd collect all my financial data. And then we'd get together in their office, and they had a plan designed for me. And I didn't have a lot of input. There wasn't a lot of education that went into it. And I just felt like, well, you put this together, but how do I feel about it? And that's kind of how the whole industry, I feel like, functions. And that's part of how the financial industry is broken and traditional financial planning is broken. And it's no different if, your employer has, and by the way, I think the intention behind these is a good intention, but I just don't think it's the right kind of planning for everybody. You go to an employer and they have a meeting once a year with HR, and somebody comes and talks to you, it's a benefits advisor, and they come tell you about the 401k plan or the HSA plan or whatever it is, and it's just one path for everybody. And I just think that's broken, because as I'm sure your listeners know, there's a lot more than one path out there. And depending on what you're trying to accomplish, a customized approach and a coordinated approach, that's the key. Coordinated is huge. And the reason I said coordinated is because I meet with people every day, and it's so funny. They have one decision got made with an insurance advisor, and another decision got made with a stock person, and another decision got made with the person that offered them the insurance on their home and their cars, and then another decision got made with an estate planning attorney, and then another decision got made with a CPA. None of those folks have ever talked to each other. So the whole thing is totally uncoordinated.
So it sounds like if I went to, and I'm blessed to have good health on my side, but it sounds like someone who goes to a physician and they need a specialist, and they have these different doctors, and they're all prescribing these different medications and they're not talking, and they actually work against each other.
That's exactly it. Yep, exactly.
Wow. Yeah, this happens all the time. So how do you combat that? How do you have a coordinated approach? And all of this, I'm assuming, is to lead to tax-free wealth.
Yeah, that's one of our focal points anyway. And I have a little bit to say on that too, but I want to answer the question you just asked. How do we do that? How do we address that? So we understand decisions shouldn't be made, in an isolated or vacuum type of situation. So when a prospective client meets with me, or somebody says, hey, I'm wanting someone else to take a second look at what my existing advisor is doing, or whatever the situation is, we start with education. And we start asking questions. And one of our orientations at Prevail, that's the name of the firm I'm at, is revealing blind spots. It's not the things that you know and that you plan for that are such a concern. It's the thing you might have not thought about yet. So I'll give you one example of a question that we'll ask people is, if tax rates go up in the future, which, by the way, a lot of people agree with us, we think tax rates are going up in the future.
They're on sale right now.
If tax rates go up in the future, how much of what you have built for yourself is still yours? And oftentimes people are like, well, what do you mean? We'll be like, well, let's look at where you're saving or accumulating wealth. And it's usually in tax deferred accounts. And tax deferred accounts are, I made 100 grand this year. I put 10,000 into my 401k. And so now I only report 90 grand, and I got a tax break this year, which is awesome. And it is. But the thing is now that money is growing and multiplying in that account. And at some point in the future, I'm going to need to take that money out as income for myself. And that's when I'll pay taxes. And in the future, we believe tax rates are likely to be higher. That pile of money is likely to be bigger. And so you created a compounding problem, and it's a blind spot nobody ever asked you about. So part of our process is asking questions to reveal blind spots, which then also brings in the education piece of, okay, now that there's a problem, what do I do about it? And then finally, Julie, how we address that issue is surrounding the folks we work for with a personal financial board of advisors. So there's, just like you said on the analogy to the medical world, there's specialists, but we have everybody talking to each other, or at least we do our best to get everybody talking to each other. So, we might have a meeting over Zoom or in the office, and we've got somebody there who specializes on investments, somebody there who specializes on estate planning, somebody who specializes on taxes, surrounding folks with that team so that decisions can be made in a coordinated way.
So powerful. I think that's a lot to absorb for most people listening, because it's not the standard within any part of any of those industries, right? You have your insurance operators that are like, no, I'm independent. This is me and this is what I do, and I'm not going to collaborate. And so to see this high level of collaboration amongst the industries for the client's well-being is phenomenal. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a big deal to us. And I hope, and I think you'll see our industry hopefully catching on that there's a real desire for that. And so hopefully we'll see that happening more. But for right now, we're glad to be different in our space and be doing that.
That's absolutely amazing. So we have to talk about tax-free wealth. We just have to. And I know that a lot of my listeners really want to invest and they want to know some strategies also on like, hey, I mean, a lot of people are investing to reduce their tax liability, and a lot of people are also trying to start investing to reduce the tax liability, but they're trying to find that money.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you asked that, and I am glad to talk about it, because one of the strategies I am most passionate about is we're incorporating as part of a foundational part of people's plan. So they're going to go into investing in real estate, or they're going to start a business, whatever it is that they're going to do to multiply and grow wealth over time. And coming in with a capital strategy for tax-free wealth, where we're positioning dividend paying whole life insurance as a tax-free asset class that fits into the portfolio also as a capital platform. So you're building up capital in this account, and you have the ability to use that capital. Why I think that's special is because if you think about the traditional places that people put money, generally it's a 401k or an IRA or something like that. And those accounts can be decent long-term. But the thing is I talk to so many like doctors or people that have accumulated a lot of money, but they can't get to it. Yeah. And they're like, I would love to participate in real estate, or I would love to start a side business. I just don't have the capital to do it. And it's hilarious because they just can't get to that capital because it's locked up in these accounts that they're not allowed to dip in the bucket until they're 59 and a half. So being able to get around that.
They don't want to self-direct those funds. Something that we've talked about before on the podcast. So it's like, maybe they don't want to, or it's not advantage, but I love the solution that I know where you're going with this, and I love the solution, and I participate in this solution. So
sure. Well, and you mentioned self-directed, which, by the way, I personally have a self-directed Roth IRA and encourage clients to look at that too. But that still is long-term money, right? Like I'm not able to enjoy any of that income today. I certainly am building wealth within that bucket and encourage clients to do so. But, there's times where you want to have access to the money today also. And so that's where the life insurance piece can be helpful.
Okay, that's genius, because I have brought that to people's attention in the past. And yet, thank you once again for shedding light on that, because some people are thinking, oh, if I use my self-directed, whatever it is, then I'm going to be able to receive those distributions, and you cannot touch a penny or a dime of that. And so you're right. Yeah, it is completely, I see your point. It is completely locked off from you. You're not going to enjoy it until that age,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Enter another powerful, perfect solution.
Well, I guess nothing's perfect, but yeah, it's one of my favorites. Our family's been using this strategy for about the last 11 years now. And here's one of my favorite things about it is, and this goes to the confidence piece of what I was talking about, control, clarity, confidence. So here's the confidence is my whole life policy that I have is it only goes up in value every year. It's not correlated to the stock market. So there's no market risk attached to it. And I make deposits regularly, just as you would make deposits in a savings account or any other account where you want to accumulate capital. I make deposits regularly, and that account does nothing but go up. And that's really, really powerful, because one of the anxieties that I have as a real estate investor, and maybe some of your listeners can associate with this, is when I'm in between deals, right? So like I cash out a deal and we just closed and yay, we made money. And then you're sitting around and there's cash sitting there doing nothing. And that just makes me anxious. And I'm like, especially now, right? Because inflation is crazy high right now. And you're just like, I don't want to have dead money. And what I love about having money in that policy as a capital container is I know it's chugging along and it's continuing to grow and compound, and it's paying minimum guaranteed interest plus a non-guaranteed dividend. And that makes me have a lot more peace of mind that I can wait until the right opportunity comes along, because my money's still doing what it's supposed to do.
I love that, because I think one of the things that can be really challenging for a lot of people is, having fear. Fear can lead to really terrible decisions. And so if people are anxious about getting that money to work, they might actually just jump into the wrong deal instead of, okay, right, my money is over here. It might be able to do more if I have it in this other asset, but actually I don't think it can, because of how how this insurance policy works. So
Yeah.
can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. And actually, can you frame the question up so that I understand too, so that I'm accurate in how I answer? Because I want to make sure I get to what you're asking.
Well, right. So what I'm thinking is we've just put, overfunded our whole life insurance policy, and it's growing. But if I understand everything correctly, and I'm phrasing this as that question because, leaving it open, right? Right. I mean, borrowing against it, it's still seeing that whole number. So if I have
Yes.
$500,000 in there, I have it funded up to $500,000 and I want to borrow against that. And I see that, there's a really good deal over there in North Carolina. I want to go put my money there. It's still going to register as $500,000.
Yes.
But I'm going to borrow and put $100,000 over in this investment.
Sure. Yeah, I think what you're getting at is the fact that the account continues to earn crediting and the interest continues to compound even when you use the dollars. So I'm going to break that down for those who are listening. It'd be cool if I could put it on a whiteboard, but since I don't have a whiteboard in front of me, I'll try to explain. So imagine a savings account first. Let's start there because everybody can understand a savings account. If you save and put $100,000 in your savings account, and let's say you were earning a really good interest rate on that, which nobody is right now because savings accounts don't really pay interest, but let's just say that you were. Let's say it was like a competitive interest rate. So maybe, I don't know, 4%, okay? Let's say you had a savings account that was earning 4%. If you have 100 grand in there this year, if you leave that money parked, it's going to earn $4,000, 4% of your 100,000. If you took the 100,000 out of that savings account and you put it in a real estate deal, yes, you could earn your returns in the real estate deal, but you would stop earning the 4% interest on that savings account because you took the money out. So that's how we all understand saving traditionally. And that's how we all understand the use of capital traditionally, is that if I take it from one place and put it somewhere else, I stop earning a return where the money was. So what's very unique about this, and we're super selective about the carriers that we work with and the products and how we build them out, because it's got to be a specific type of whole life insurance that pays a dividend and credits you the full dividend even when you use the money. So now we'll go back to my $100,000 example. And now instead of a savings account, that money's in a whole life policy that's earning interest and dividends. If you leave the money parked this year, you'll earn your interest and dividends. If you take and use the money via a policy loan, like you mentioned, and go put it in a real estate deal, you'll earn the returns in the real estate deal, and you will continue to earn your interest and dividends within the policy. So you can actually quite literally earn money in two places at the same time. And so you're building tax-free wealth inside your policy at the same time that you're building wealth in your real estate portfolio. And that is the magic and the power of this particular strategy as a capital strategy.
It's so phenomenal. I love it because it's taking Kiyosaki's concept of, having your money make money while you sleep. It's like, oh no, that same dollar is doing multiple jobs. It's going the distance. Now, what are some of the, as we have this expression around my house right now, that's where they get you, it's like, okay, so we're some people who are listening to this, some of my, I will say affectionately, realists. They're not, I will not call them skeptics. I will call, my husband hates it when I call him a skeptic. He's like, I'm a realist. So for the realists out there who, think this is too good to be true, they're gonna get you, like, what are some of the practical elements we should know?
Yeah, well, I think it's fair to say, this is a product that's offered by insurance companies, and we are simply manipulating and taking advantage of some of the things we can get out of that product if we build it a certain way. So that's what we're after. But the insurance company wouldn't offer the product if it wasn't profitable. So we have to address that. So where's that come in? Well, one of the reasons, and I think the real question is behind what you just asked is, why wouldn't you do this? What's a reason you would choose not to use this strategy? And the primary thing that I think of, and the reason some folks decide this is not a fit as part of their strategy or their portfolio, is you're purchasing an insurance policy, and that does have a cost associated to it. You're buying a death benefit. And so no matter how we build it and no matter what you do, we can't get around the fact that you're going to buy some level of death benefit. Now, we are deliberately minimizing that. We're deliberately minimizing that cost. And so over time, long term, this is going to accumulate far more than you ever put into it. But in the early years of your policy's life, what you're going to see is you will not have access to 100% of the cash you've deposited, because some of that came off the top and went to the insurance company as the cost of insurance. Because there's a death benefit tied to this, and if you happen to be one of the unlucky ones that, you know, dies too early, right? Too early, and you've put in, let's say, $50,000, and now they have to pay out $500,000 to your family. Well, they have to find a way to make up that risk, and the way they do it is taking out the cost of insurance on the early years of the policy's life. So that's one reason some folks choose not to do this. And so I guess what I would say is a couple of things to that. Number one, if the death benefit has absolutely no value to you and you do not have an interest in building a legacy or leaving an impact when you're gone, if that's kind of your life philosophy and your orientation, this might not be a good strategy for you, because there's cheaper ways, if you will, to build a savings. On the other hand, I would say, look at all the traditional accounts that you have. And let's just say, I'm gonna go after a 401k for a minute, which, by the way, I have one, but I can understand the pros and cons of all these different strategies. So let's say I put $10,000 into a 401k this year. How much can I dip in and use?
Zero.
And if I do that next year, I'm 40, by the way, so next year I'm 41. If I do that next year and I do the same thing and I've put in $20,000 now, how much can I use?
Zero
still. So now if I turn around and I do that with a policy, which, by the way, I can build as a tax-free asset, right? So I can take the money out tax-free, and I put in 10,000 this year, I'm just going to throw an arbitrary number out because it looks different for everybody. But let's say I have access to half of that. That's $5,000. And let's say next year I put in 20,000 and now I've got access to 13. Well, that's not 100% of my money, but it's a heck of a lot better than putting in 20 grand and not having access to any of it. So, and over the long term, what ends up happening is I end up having access to more cash than I ever deposited. So I think viewing this through the lens of it being a long-term capital asset, and also that it's not something you do as opposed to a 401k or a Roth IRA or any other type of place you would put money. It's not that you're doing this instead of those things. It's that this asset can come in as a part of the overall piece of the puzzle and make everything coordinate and work together better. And I'll give you a real quick example of that. So I had a client in my office a while ago, 45 years old. He was maxing out 401k at work. He was maxing out Roth outside of work, was interested in doing some real estate investing, and was a subscriber to the mindset of buy term and invest the rest, which is kind of a popular phrase out there. And there's different schools of thought on this. And my goal is not to convince anybody either way. It's just, it is what it is. So he said, I would like to see what it looks like if I incorporate this asset. And what was really interesting is if we plugged a policy in and added that to the things he was already doing, when he got to retirement, and I put that in air quotes because I think those of us who are like entrepreneurial minded, we maybe don't ever want to stop working and having impact. It's just we want a choice of when and what kind of work and how much, right? Yep. So when we get to retirement, meaning we have enough assets that we can take some income now, I played that out for him from age 65 to 90. And what was interesting is he ended up with significantly more money having the policy as a tax-free bucket for additional income in retirement. And furthermore, depending on market swings and whatnot, if he didn't have a policy, which, by the way, we said goes up in value every year, doesn't go down, depending on market swings, might have run out of money at age 79. However, when we threw the policy in and kind of flight simulated different scenarios, the money lasted well beyond age 90, plus the death benefit, don't forget. So it coordinates with everything better and puts you in a better position long term.
It's absolutely amazing. If you pull money out, are there any liabilities on that? So do you have to make any payments every single month because you borrowed that? Like a lot of people listening might hear that as, oh, it's similar to a HELOC. And so I'm going to pay. What does that look like?
Yeah, really good question. So again, I want to start from a baseline of, let's go back to, you have a savings account. and it's got $100,000 and you take some of that money out, generally your intention, if you're financially disciplined, your intention is going to be to put that money back over time. So the way you can look at that is say, well, you borrowed from yourself. We took money from our savings, we borrowed that money, and the intention is we will replenish that savings. Okay, so when we hear the term borrowing, I think there's a negative connotation because we feel this obligation or, like you said, liability. Well, when you take money out of a savings account, even though you, quote, paid cash, yeah, but you borrowed from yourself, so your intention is to put it back. So now let's talk about a policy and how does that function look like if we have a policy. So you're going to borrow from yourself. You're going to use a policy loan. Why? Well, because if you make a withdrawal, the IRS is going to consider that taxable income. So you don't want to make a withdrawal, you want to do a loan because loans are borrowed money and therefore are not income. So you take a policy loan. Now, to justify that as a loan, the insurance company, and also because the insurance company is in business, they're going to charge you simple interest on that. So now this is where a lot of folks will go, okay, this doesn't feel good to me because why do I want to pay interest to use my own money? Well, don't forget about the fact that when we're deploying money, we are still earning compounding interest and dividends on that money. And those interest and dividends will come back to more than offset the amount of interest that you would accumulate from the insurance company. So now to answer your question, I take the money out, I use it. The insurance company is going to charge me a simple annual interest rate. What's really cool about that is it's very easy to calculate your cost of capital. Most financial institutions, when you take money through borrowing, are going to charge you amortized interest. If you've ever tried to calculate that, it's really hard to calculate. And amortized interest, you pay back on the front end of the loan. If you need proof of that, pull out your mortgage statement and look at how much of your mortgage payment goes towards interest and how much goes towards principal. And what you'll find is you're not paying the 3 or 4% or whatever the bank quoted you, you're paying an effective 75% if you're in the first few years of your mortgage, because 3/4 of what you're paying in a mortgage payment is going towards interest. That's amortized interest. They get it out of you on the front end. Simple interest is much easier than that. If you take a $100,000 loan and you owe 5% simple interest, that means over the course of the next 12 months, you're going to accumulate $5,000 of interest. If you pay it back in half that time, 6 months, you'll only accumulate half the amount of interest. So it's actually a better way to borrow.
Powerful way to borrow and to get that money working in super powerful ways. So if someone wanted to get started, what would they do?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely a path of education. So getting together with someone like me, or if you have an advisor in your world that is familiar with and does this with their own money, and really getting familiar with the strategy by maybe reading a book on it, or if you're more acquainted with the strategy, maybe we start looking at examples of, in your world, what would be an impactful policy, and just, kind of flight simulating different scenarios to see what it looks like for you. And really going back, this goes back to what I was talking about control and clarity and confidence, is customizing something built on what you want to do. So where you start is talking with an advisor that knows about this. And I would say make sure they're doing it with their own money so that they're speaking with authority on it and can speak from experience.
I think that's really important right there, that part. There are a lot of people who will say that they do this, but they don't actually go into the super nuances of it. And they might have the general idea, but my impression, we've spoken many times, is like, there are so many ways, as my dad used to have this expression, there are so many ways to skin a cat, like there's so many ways to go about this, but not all ways are created equal. And so even if you know someone who maybe, deals life insurance or, dabbles in this, like, we don't want somebody who is dabbling. You want someone who's an expert, who really knows all the intricate parts of it that are moving. So how would they vet someone then?
Yeah, I would. Very good question. How do we do that? I would say asking a couple key questions about what kind of companies do you work with? And the answer to that question needs to be, we only work with mutual insurers, and those insurers need to have a proven financial track record. So they're strong financially, have been in existence for a long time. And then specific to those companies, you might ask, talk to me about policy loans. So I'm going to give you guys some language, some of the industry language.
Right.
Does the company do what's called direct recognition of policy loans, or do they do non-direct recognition of policy loans? And that non-direct recognition piece is key, because that goes back to what we talked about earlier, which is those companies will pay you and credit you all of your interest and dividends, even when you're using your money. So non-direct recognition of policy loan, mutual insurer with a long financial track record, established financial track record. And I think the other thing too is that insurance professional or financial advisor who is, who you're in front of and talking to about this, I would tell them, hey, I'm intending to use this for real estate. Can you give me maybe an example or a case study of how that would work? Or tell them, I'm thinking of using this strategy to pay off debt, and I want to arbitrage my dollars while I pay off my debt. One of two things will happen. Either their head will start spinning, or they'll be able to present you an example of how that works. And that's kind of how you can call someone's bluff.
Those are really great ways to look into this further. Thank you. Now, you mentioned a book earlier, and there are many books out there on this topic, but like all things, some are a little bit better than others. So what is your top one or two recommendations? Yeah,
I think there's, just like you said, Julie, there's a lot of good books on this. Two that are really good and good for different reasons. If you're more the person that likes stories and philosophy and, kind of keeping things high level and not getting real heavy in math, there is a really good book on this called What Would the Rockefellers Do by Garrett Gunderson. You can Google that and you'll be able to find the book. It's probably on Amazon. If you more like to dive into the numbers and get a little more technical, and you want to hear from the everybody calls him the grandfather or the OG on this strategy, his name is Nelson Nash, and he put a book out there called Becoming Your Own Banker. Really good book. It is numbers heavy. It'll put you to sleep if you're not into numbers, but a good book on it. So I think both of those are great. And there's some shorter ones out there. Julie, if you're okay, I'll put another couple titles out there.
Oh, absolutely.
As it relates to tax-free retirement income, a guy named David McKnight wrote a really good book called The Power of Zero, and that's available on Amazon. And then as far as the, using this as a capital strategy to support real estate, business, and other ventures, a gal named Kim Butler has a book out there called Live Your Life Insurance. So all those are fantastic. There's tons more reads on it. Hopefully I'll have my own book out there someday on this, but those are some great titles.
We're going to hold you to that.
Yeah.
By the time you're 45, you're going to have a book.
There we go.
There.
I like it.
I like it. That's really great. Is there anything else that people should understand about this? Well, I think that this definitely is something that isn't necessarily a fit for everybody, and I think that's okay. My goal today in sharing this is what I see as an innovative strategy. It's disruptive in our industry. Not a lot of advisors coach clients on this or teach clients about this. And it's a powerful, powerful asset when it fits with what you're wanting to do. So I just think it's just like any other new idea. It's worth looking into and having an open mind and kind of examining for yourself and seeing, does this fit with what I want to do? So I love the process of helping people educate themselves on that and make that decision. And again, from my standpoint in client meetings, it's about how can we help you establish more control so that you've got access to the dollars you're working so hard to earn and build, more clarity so that you don't have this disjointed, kind of puzzle pieces all over the table type thing like what we described in the beginning of our talk here. And then confidence, because if we can reestablish control, give you clarity on where you're headed and what you want to do, it gives you a lot more confidence that, yeah, we're going to be okay. Not only are we going to be okay, we're going to do really well, and we're going to be able to make the impact on the rest of the world that we want. And that's what I'm after as kind of the pinnacle of client experience for the folks I work for. So I would encourage everybody, to kind of pursue those goals of control, clarity, and confidence in your finances. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I just had a fleeting thought that was supportive of that. But as we wrap up, I'd love to know, I want people to be able to find you. Where do you want them to connect up? Or do you have some freebies over on your website? Like, what's the best way?
So the firm that I'm at is called Prevail Strategies. We're based out of Kansas City. We have offices around the country, but Kansas City's home base. So if you want to, yes, we do have some freebies, a couple books available, and a really good blog on our website, including a section on real estate and passive real estate investing. So the website there is prevailiws.com, stands for Prevail Innovative Wealth Strategies, prevailiws.com. And then as far as me individually, you can either look me up on our team members section of that page, or LinkedIn is a fantastic way. It's how Julie and I got connected. LinkedIn really is my social calling card, and almost as good as my cell phone. So I'm the only Adam Doran in Kansas City. You can look me up on there, and it's very clear I'm into real estate. I've got it right there on my profile, so you'll recognize me, I'm sure.
It's so wonderful to bring this topic to the surface. Once again, it's been a while since we've discussed it on the podcast, and it's so paramount. And I love that, like your approach is, like just more perspective, further clarity. And I want everyone listening, make sure, one, if you're not on LinkedIn and you want to take your real estate to the next level, you need to make sure that you are set up on LinkedIn and that you're connecting, because it is an amazing place for strong professionals. And as Adam and I have both mentioned at different points, that is exactly where we met. We've known each other for, golly, I want to say almost like a year and a half or 2 years at this point. It's like, it's a great place to create really critical relationships, like people that can guide you and, be that bridge in different parts of your life, or to someone that you know. So you might be listening to this and you might say, well, I'm going to look into this for me, but you know what good friends do and good family members, they say, wow, this sounds good to me, but who else do I know that would benefit from this? So make sure that, you're linking arms with other people so that they're learning these things as well. So if you know someone that would benefit, make sure that you share this episode with them so that they can benefit from it as well. Until next time, I didn't even say thank you. Wow. Let me stop myself right there. Adam, thank you so much for coming on The Conscious Investor and, sharing this amazing strategy with all of the listeners.
Absolutely. I appreciate the invite too. This has been a really fun conversation, and I hope everybody got some good nuggets out of it.
I have no doubt they did. All right. Make sure you go and share this episode with at least a couple of people, because I know you're awesome. And I know that you know people that need to hear this information. Until next time, live big, love bigger. What's the big deal about investing in apartments? Why is it better than investing in a slew of single-family homes? I've compiled a lot of information on why investing in a multifamily, also known as apartments, will help you reach your investment goals. Head over to 3keysinvestments.com and download the Why Invest in Multifamily guide today.